people get involved in your campaign. They say, you know what, I love this woman, I love what she's doing, she's fighting for us. This is John Villarreal reporting for Conservative New Media.
But something seems to be missing, especially it seems like in this last year or two, something's missing in this more enlightened day. I guess some people want to consider this day, but here's the crux of the issue. It's what Dennis Prager was trying to get at. The Constitution has given us an amazingly valuable governing principle and institution. This Constitution provides us with checks and balances and limited government with enumerated powers and independent judiciary and states' rights as protected under the 10th Amendment. But those principles that are enshrined are still the best possible protection against tyranny. They're not enough in and of themselves to assure the survival and the success of liberty or the survival of our country. There have been other countries that have sometimes managed to kind of live by essentially the same laws of nature that America has, that we enshrined in our founding documents. Countries have tried to copy our Constitution and our institutions, but if you think about it, not all of them are still free today. But it is human nature to want to be free. People living in these countries, they still want to be free. Countries that have tried to copy what it is that America does, but they haven't been successful. In all countries, even in the worst tyrannies, you'll find people courageous enough to stand up for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And it is in the striving that helped bring down the Berlin Wall. Remember, it made one brave man stare down a column of tanks near Tiananmen Square. And it brought thousands of people onto the streets of Tehran to defy the unelected dictatorship of their country. What a contrast, by the way, between the ultimate sacrifice made about a year ago, made by the beautiful young Iranian woman, Nadia Sultan. She was shot through the heart and bleeding to death on the streets of Tehran while demonstrating for her freedom and for women's rights, for equal rights. What a contrast between her and the students or the political operatives, anyway, maybe not students necessarily, here, who spent their valuable, precious time diving through dumpsters before this event in order to silence someone with whom they prejudicially thought that they came to disagreement. Now, a suggestion for those dumpster divers. Instead of trying to tell people to sit down and shut up, maybe you tell, and sometimes telling people like our president to kindly stand up and speak out for those like Nadia, and she sought her freedom. She was willing to die for it and to speak about perhaps the brutal suppression of Iran's green movement and may have become a green revolution. Students and political operatives who've been part of the controversy of this event tonight, goodness gracious, you have a chance to hold America's leadership to the high ideals of which this country was founded. Please take that opportunity. It really is much more worthy and important than rummaging through garbage bins to reveal to the world perhaps someone's demand for bendy straws. Speaking to a couple of new friends that I made on this day, who come from Iran, as a matter of fact, they reminded me of America's opportunity to export our democracy in such a good way. That is so encouraging and so inspiring to me to keep up a good fight. But okay, back to the point though, as inspiring as these revolutions are, these aforementioned revolutions, and as hopeful as the efforts at emulating our successful Constitution may be, in the end we can learn as much though from the failed attempts at copying our institutions as from the successful ones. And again, I wish that we had more time. One way to get more examples of some of these failed revolutions and what we can learn from them so that we do not repeat the mistakes of other countries in the past is, I'll do a little advertisement here. If you watch on Fridays, Founders Fridays, Glenn Beck, he highlights much Founders Friday. This is my reminder. Yes. The poor man's first with a teleprompter. Thank you, Ross. He didn't get me a teleprompter. But he successful attempts with other countries, even in the past. And historians agree, though, for example, that one example we hear much about, the German Weimar Republic had the most democratic constitution in the world. Did you know that? In human history. The historians look back and say, man, their constitution was even more democratic than our own. But that same constitution allowed a man named Adolf Hitler to seize power because of some tweaks in the law and some misinterpretations of what the Constitution actually said. It allowed then Adolf Hitler to seize power and plunge the world into a nightmare period of chaos and war and genocidal murder. These failures like that one show us that freedom doesn't just depend on institutional guarantees or words written on a document. It is also, and above all, a question of culture. And here's where the university system comes in. To most Americans, freedom isn't just an ideal or words written on a charter of liberty. It is a way of life for most of us. And it's in our lively public debates, which give us opportunity to exercise our constitutional rights to free speech even. And it's in our free markets, which give everyone with an idea and with a willingness to work hard, to really work hard, to make something of themselves in this country. And it's in our voluntary associations and our culture of most generous, voluntary, charitable giving. When we see someone having troubles, for instance, our instinctive response for most of us, it's not, well, what's the government going to do about it? No, our response is, what can I do to help? How can I jump in there and help? It's this love of freedom and the moral capital that's generated through these free markets and these free associations that has helped keep our great Republican experiment alive for more than 200 years now. So when we see Washington straying from those ideals and the free market system that has built America into the strongest, most generous country on earth, it's why we know we're on the wrong path right now. We have to turn some things around. And America may be founded by laws, see, but it's sustained by a morality that's recognized by so many other countries even. As the French writer Alexis de Tocqueville said, America is a great country because America is a good country. And Dennis Prager's point that night in Denver was that this uniquely American culture of freedom, it needs protecting and nurturing, and it needs to be carefully handed over from one generation to the next. And Brady needs to speak of this too. So schools, the universities need to take note of this message, which is where education does come in. President Kennedy once spoke of the survival and success of liberty. Well, there can be no survival and success of liberty without an education in freedom and the values that made this country great. Values like thrift and perseverance and responsibility and work ethic. The word for honest, hard work. And some might say that there is a contradiction here, perhaps. They argue that academic freedom is incompatible with our need for a civic education that instills in young people the wisdom and the patriotic grace necessary for the survival and the success of liberty. But I think that they are wrong. I think that they are dangerously wrong. The fact that we allow or should allow for a healthy and free academic debate of all ideas doesn't mean that we have to believe that all ideas are equally valid. Unfortunately, too often that turns into just one small step away from claiming that, well, there just isn't just one right answer to the question, what is right, what is good, or just, or true. To say that there are no right answers to these questions. That's where relativism comes into play, and that turns into nihilism. And then we find people saying, well, then nothing is true. Therefore, anything goes. Just do it. Everything's permitted. There's no truth. If this cultural relativism is confined merely to a few individuals, the exceptions to the norm, well, that's one thing. But we have seen before what happens when whole sections of society fall into that trap. Take note of this. Consider that would the brutality of communism have lasted as long as it did if there hadn't been a large group of people here in the West who were willing to essentially accommodate it for fear of daring to even condemn it. For a long time, folks, it was kind of considered sophisticated to take a position somewhere between freedom and communism. And it took a supposedly unsophisticated graduate from lowly Eureka College to bring communism to its knees. And he did it by simply calling an evil empire what it was: evil.